Hey, what's up everybody? Video 44 coming at you with another video. Alright, so rumor mill, of course, doesn't have to hold any weight, but for the sake of fun, we just talk about what I'm hearing about. So I just read somewhere that the San Antonio Spurs may be interested in trading for Darius Garland. Now, me personally, I think it'd be easier to just use one of your 2 picks and just draft one of these young players. I don't know how far away those guys are from turning into Darius Garland, but the guys that you're in a position to get with that 4th overall pick may potentially be as good as Darius Garland, to be completely honest with you. But I also see the fruit in maybe moving on from some of the guys that the San Antonio Spurs are holding on to in contract. Because to be honest with you, them dudes are not necessarily fitting with Wemby the way that ultimately I'm sure they would want it to. So it could be, in theory, just getting rid of some contracts you don't want and bringing back a guy you do. So for that, we'll entertain it, but I still think there are other ways to utilize your money than to taking on Darius' contract, to be honest with you. But I did the trade tracker, checked it out, and basically you could get it done with Keldon Johnson's contract, Jeremy Sohan, and Trey Jones. Or if you want to remove Trey Jones, you can throw in Zach Collins. I know the Cleveland Cavaliers are thinking about getting a center at some point during this process. If I'm the San Antonio Spurs, I probably am expecting that I'm going to have to give up some draft equity. And given the fact that they're draft rich, it shouldn't be a problem to throw in some draft capital. I don't know how many first-round picks the Cleveland Cavaliers would want. And I'm not sure exactly what the Spurs have, but I know they have plenty. So it's one of those situations where for them, I'm more likely to throw in picks and have the mentality of doing so rather than, as I normally am considering my team, the Lakers, who only has 3 picks to work with. Picks more so mean more to me as a Laker fan than they would if I were representing the Spurs. So probably have to throw in a first or 2. But these are young players that I'm giving up. Trey Jones is getting better. Sohan obviously can do a lot for the Cleveland Cavaliers. And Keldon Johnson is a nice player. I don't love Keldon Johnson, to be honest with you, but for what it is that I'm trying to do to bring back Darius Garland, he would definitely be someone I'd be happy to throw in. And I think the bulk of the salary comes from him. Now, some may say, yo, throw in Devin Vassell or something like that. Hell no. Devin Vassell is on a 5-year contract at $5+ million a year. That's like one of the best contracts on the planet, if you ask me. Like, I knew he shouldn't have signed it when he did. He signed it like 2 years ago or whatever it was. I think it was 2 years ago, right before he started really showing people what he could do. At this point, that's like one of the best contracts out there. There's no way in hell I'm letting that go from the San Antonio Spurs. 0 chance. You're getting Keldon Johnson off of me. But like, of course, obviously you don't consider Wembanyama. I mean, he's making $13 million a year. He's the future of the franchise. Untradeable, probably the most important asset in maybe all of basketball. So, of course, he's never going to be on the trade block. But pretty much everything else they have, like Blake Wesley, those guys are on like $2 million contracts. Maybe you don't want to re-sign a guy like that, and you see a path down the road to letting go of him making more sense than re-signing him. So I could see them trying to sweeten the deal by throwing a couple of those on there instead of throwing in so much draft equity. But, you know, I honestly think a guy like Shepard or Dillingham is probably going to end up being just as good as Darius Garland. I'm just going to be honest with you. At like a very small fraction of the cost. Because Darius Garland's at $34 million for the next several years. And while that's a good player, I hate the contract, if I'm being completely honest with you. I hate the contract. So I think he's a proven all-star that can help Wemby win. You know, Wemby with the wingspan and the ability to defend the way that he does gives Garland that backline defense that'll help him in situations where he's going up against guys who are bigger than him, which is pretty much most players. So you got the environment for Darius Garland to step in and play well. I think Garland's going to be a star going forward. He'll probably be better than he is right now going forward. But he's also kind of fragile. A lot of young players are fragile and they don't stay that way. But, you know, you just got to consider these type of things when you're talking about bringing in a guy that's already been paid as if he's proven to be what it is you expect him to become. And while he's made an all-star team, he's also had some injury seasons. So I'm not thrilled about this if I'm the San Antonio Spurs. I do want people to know that I'm on You know, I'm out here trying to get a star guard, possibly Trae Young, Donovan Mitchell, Darius Garland. You know, I just want to, if I'm them, I'm putting my feelers out there so people know what it is I'm trying to bring back. So I don't know that they actually pulled the trigger on Darius Garland, but they probably are aiming for someone like that. But I'm telling you, if I'm the Spurs, I got the 4th overall pick and a bunch of draft equity. There's not a whole lot I can't get. So if you just love Darius Garland, that's cool. Then you know, that's one thing, you bring him in. But if you're trying to fill a role for a leading guard, you got 2 picks in the lottery this year. I think them 2 guards are probably just as good as Darius Garland. In fact, I can argue that Ben Shepherd is probably going to be better than Darius Garland. I think he might be. So that's one of them situations where, like, are you sure, Spurs? Like, are you sure? You know what I mean? That's one of them type of situations. And once you bring a small guard to you, which all these guys that I'm considering are small, you have to take into account that you're going to need size next to him. You already got Devin Vassell. He's good, but is he great defensively? Do you have enough help defense to make it so that your team doesn't suck defensively? Despite having Wemby, one of the best defenders in the world, you're still coming off a season where your team was terrible. So you obviously need players in the perimeter who can defend as well. Maybe you throw in Malachi Branham so you won't have him, instead of maybe some other type of salary match in this type of trade. They got their options. So that's really what it is. I'm just wondering if they have enough wing help. Maybe the Spurs can pivot away from looking for a guard in this draft and then take 2 wings, which makes a lot of sense to me. Maybe you hold on to your pick. You trade futures if you want to get Garland, but keep this year's draft pick and maybe take Castle for a bigger guard, or Saloon, who will be available, or maybe you get lucky and Risachet falls to you, which I think is possible right now. So it's a lot of different things that they can do, the Spurs. And because they have 2 lottery picks, they can afford to give up 1 and still get their guard or their forward. But I think the idea of Darius Garland is probably better than Darius Garland, to be honest with you. Like, I like Darius Garland, the player, but that contract, it ain't nothing to want, in my opinion. It's really not. It ain't nothing to want. For a team like the Spurs, there's probably a better place for it than most landing spots. For what it's worth, I'd take it for them more so than I take it for the Lakers or somebody who doesn't have a lot of draft equity. So, yeah, it's not a killer or nothing. It's not a poison pill. But if you're talking about just capitalizing on value, I don't want to take on Darius Garland's contract if I'm being completely honest with everybody. I'm going to pivot in a different direction. So that's just me, man. I probably just draft Castle, Dillingham, Carter. They got a lot of guards in this draft. This draft is not hurting for lead guards. Even a guy that I'm starting to really appreciate, Bub Carrington. It's a little rich to take him at 4 and 8, but you could trade down and probably still get him, Tyler Kolek. All of these guys, I think, could be potentially good guards for the San Antonio Spurs. Obviously, we know that the Serbian point guard has got the knee, so you probably don't take him at the 4 or the 8th spot if you're the Spurs. But maybe you find out the knee is fine. Maybe you find out you can live with it. Luckily enough, he had the injury early enough in the summer to where he'll probably be ready by October anyway. Maybe you take him. and he definitely will fit what you need as well in some areas. So Darius Garland, like I said, I like Darius Garland, the player. I would have drafted him if it were up to me as a Laker fan with the 4th overall pick before we made the Anthony Davis trade. That would have been what I did. So far be it from me to tell you I don't like Darius Garland, but I just think he made an all-star team early in his career, proved that he has some real talent, and now people want to kind of like peg him as a all-star going forward, which they have the evidence to show, but you also have evidence that he's an injury-prone player at this point, and you don't know which way it's going to teeter. And I tell everybody D'Angelo Russell made an all-star team too, and if you would have paid him right after that, you'd be stuck on a terrible contract. So it's a lot of different things that you got to consider when you look at a guy who makes an all-star team early in his career. You got to look at the fullness of what it is that he's done and ask yourself if the contract that he's now been paid because he's been an all-star is worth it for what it is that you're trying to do. And if you're the Spurs, maybe it is. Maybe it is. But I can think of options that I think may be better ones, more cost-effective options. More of a easier way forward for the Spurs over the next several years than committing that kind of contract to this type of player at this point. That's my opinion. I'd just take one of them guards in the draft and not worry about that, or look for a lesser expensive guard and then use both of those picks for other needs as well. So we'll see what they do, man. If they don't throw any draft equity in and just do the salary matches, I think that could be a decent thing. But if they're throwing in pick equity, hopefully for their sake, it won't be anything from this draft, in my opinion. I think they could really use the draft. Put it like this. The drafts in the future are probably better than this draft right here. But because of their timeline, if they're going to go through the draft, they should probably do it sooner than later so that the players they bring in can be more developed sooner, etc. So that's one way of looking at it. That's my way of looking at it at this point. But I mean, if the Spurs get Garland, I'm not going to kill it. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that it's a bad thing. I'm not going to kill the trade, or depending on what they give up, there should be no reason to kill the trade. I just think there are other ways to fill your point guard spot with a short 6'1" guard. They got those in the draft who have the upside that Garland's already proven, but I think those guys are going to be as good as Garland, man. I do. I think probably 3 of them dudes are going to be as good as Garland. So that's just my point of view. Anyway, that's pretty much what I got to say. My name is BDF44. I thank y'all for watching. Bye.